Joining me now is the Cobourg Cougars head coach and general manager, Wes Wolfe. And Wes, thanks very much for taking time out of your schedule. I know it's a busy time for yourself trying to figure out how to reschedule hockey games. 8 games are going to have to be rescheduled, 4 at home, 4 away. Just the whole concept of getting the team organized and trying to keep them active as to off-ice activities over the next 3 weeks. But first, Wes, let's talk about your first initial reaction when you heard the news that the league is going to be shut down. You're not going to be included in the part of that it's not a high performance league, that it's not a high performance athlete. So let's get your initial reaction first when you found out, just like the rest of us back on Monday.
Well, first, thanks for having me, Mark. Really appreciate the coverage for our athletes and for our team. I think it's important that we do have the opportunity to tell our side of things here. And in terms of, first reactions, it was definitely disappointment. And I think that's something that we tried to reiterate to our players in the very beginning, that it's okay to be disappointed. And I think we're all having the same feelings of, anger and frustration and disappointment. But we don't want it to lead to discouragement. And I think that's the most important thing, is that we stay together, united as a group, and that everyone recognizes that they have a support team behind them, and that, before we know it, 3 weeks is going to go by. And as long as we're able to stay together through that we're going to be able to get through it. And I think it's important to acknowledge that even though the provincial government has made their distinction about what constitutes an elite league, it certainly doesn't mean that our athletes are not high performance and that they're not a high performance league. I think it's they've clearly made their distinction that the highest level you can play at in each category is the ones that they're going to allow to continue. But it certainly doesn't mean that our athletes are not high performance. So I just wanted to make sure that that is out there, and I think that's something that we've tried to clarify for our athletes as well, is that they're very much high performance, they're very much elite. We just don't happen to be a part of the plans right now.
Have you met with the team, Wes, and what's their reaction been through this whole entire thing? Because, a lot of these kids have went through this over the past 2 years. You look at guys like George Gutierrez and Jacob Gilbert, who have been here since the 2018 team, 18-19 team, and then last year did that partial year of play of hockey. So what's been the reaction of the kids, and how much interaction are you having with them right now?
Yeah, we certainly have had quite a bit of interaction. It's, funny, a couple of days before the provincial government made their announcement, we did individual Zoom meetings with some planning to come back. And, I think the overwhelming sense from the entire group was just how excited they were to get back to things. It was nice to have a break at Christmas and see family and friends, but I think everyone was pretty ignited to come back for the second half of the season and enjoy some success as a group. So, when the news broke, we obviously sent out some mass communication, but I thought it was important to reach out individually to everyone. I know for me personally, it was a tough pill to swallow. It was we've put so much into returning, whether it was getting fully vaccinated or all of the different protocols that are in place. I think, the sense of loss and hopelessness that, this 3-week pause is happening, and that really, based on our previous experience, it could be more than that. It's overwhelming. So, after we reached out and had some individual conversations, I thought it was really important, to give the players space to process their feelings about it. I know that, as a coach or as a leader, you have kind of 2 jobs, and sometimes it's to be thermometer and take the temperature of your team and, see how everyone's feeling. And then, it's time to be a thermostat and that set the temperature of the room. And I know in the first couple of days, I thought it was really important to just be a thermometer and take the temperature and see how people were feeling and see how they were processing it. And then finally, on Tuesday evening, we had a team call. And that was sort of the first steps of being the thermostat and setting the temperature and setting the tone for the next 3 weeks and what we were going to accomplish with it.
Wes, putting the hockey business to aside with these players and keeping them, engaged for hockey, How do you, as a coach, a GM, and an organization, help them through the mental aspect of this? Because mental health is something that we've have seen come forefront during this whole almost 2 years now of COVID-19, and how important mental health is. And you get a lot of these kids who want to get back, as you stated, we're excited to get back, and now it's another shot in the butt, I guess, to say that they can't. And they're back online learning and everything for these kids that are still in school. So how do you as a team and a group and an organization help them with the mental health side of this?
Well, I think it's something that's ongoing. I know my own personal philosophy, and something that we've adopted as an organization, is this idea of holistic development, that even though our players come to us to become better hockey players, we want them to be better people. And part of that is, the support that goes along with it. We have a director of player wellness, Tony Posthumus, who meets with the group regularly and offers individual services. Our coaching staff and executive are fully available. I know the OJHL also has the First Assist program in place for mental health initiatives. But on top of that, we continuously reinforce to our players that, you're a human being, not a human doing. And even though hockey is something that we do, we play hockey, we go to the rink, all these players are training, daily to achieve their goals. It's still just something that you do. And we all have so many different roles in our lives, whether it's, being a brother, or being a teammate, or being a student, or, there are so many other things in our lives that take precedent. And I think that, we want to make sure that we focus on person first, and the rest of it is secondary, truthfully. And I think that's really important, especially when you go through times like this, that you take stock of the things that are important in your life. And again, it can be a positive that even though we're frustrated that there's 3-week break in the season here, it gives you an opportunity to spend more time with, people that you may not get as much time to spend during the hockey season, and focus on yourself and some development in other areas.
Wes, last question on the high performance part of this before we move on. You coached 5 years in the OHL as an assistant coach with the Erie Otters. Obviously, the scenarios of some of these kids don't want to take that next step to the OHL because they're looking south of the border for scholarships, which makes them high performance athletes in many people's mind. How do you juggle that with, because some of these kids have made the decision to stay here because they're looking for a scholarship and don't want to take the jump to the OHL, because we all know once they do that and go to a training camp, they're now ineligible down in the States because of the rules. So, these kids have made the decision to stay there, and, they are being punished just because they didn't make that step there.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky distinction, because we do have 6 players on our roster who have either signed to play major junior hockey or are returning to junior A from major junior. And so, for those players, like 3 in particular, Ty York, Duncan Schneider, and Mason Vicari, they're all intending on playing in the OHL next season full time, and have spent various parts of the season up with their OHL clubs. They're continuing to train, and their futures being directly impacted in that regard as well. And then we have this whole other faction of players, as you mentioned, that, their current pursuit is of an NCAA scholarship, and they're unable to play. So I think that's probably been one of the most challenging answers to the questions I've had from the players, is why are certain groups allowed to play and we're not? And I don't know that there's necessarily been, an adequate answer that makes it feel fair or justified. I don't think it's any safer for one group of players to play at another not to. I think it's just continuing to, emphasize that we need to put this in perspective, that there is an ongoing global pandemic. We need to do our part. And as frustrating as it is, we need to trust that, the people who are making decisions are doing them with our best interests in mind. And so, I guess getting back to your question about mental health and being a human being, hockey is obviously such a big part of our athletes' lives. It's something they've been working towards their entire lives. And it represents their immediacy and their future for the next few years, but they still have an entire life to live. And we want to make sure that our people are safe, that the community is safe, and we need to continue to do our part.
Shifting gears a little bit, Wes, I assume that you can have contact with the kids throughout this 3 week break. It's not it's just the on ice activities that you're not allowed to have it with the kids. And you can correct me if I'm wrong when you answer. But so, what's the plan now that you've laid out for these kids for the next 3 weeks? And obviously, before that, as we stated, they had a good break. The last game was on December 20th. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure they had a good break, a good time off during the Christmas break to, as you said, to see family, friends, and go home and enjoy some time away from the rink. So what is your plan as a coach and general manager for these kids now over the next 3 weeks to keep them active, to keep them on their training regime? You know, some of the kids may have some home gyms, some may not, and they're being affected because of the fact that gyms are no longer open anymore as well. So what's the message to you, to the players to keep in shape and active during this break?
Well, I think number one, was the message that we want to win the next 3 weeks. And the acronym that, we used for win was what's important now, and not what's important yesterday or what's important tomorrow or what's important in 3 weeks. It's what's important now. And I think it's taking it day by day to make sure that we are making use of this time that we have. So I guess in regards to physical activity, we've arranged for Zoom workouts with our strength and conditioning coach, Dennis Sicard, who's going to meet with them a couple times a week, and have all of our athletes participate via Zoom for those workouts. I know a number of our players do have access to home gyms. And then on top of that, there are outdoor rinks that players are still able to utilize. I know for myself, I'm still in the Niagara region right now. I have a couple friends who have outdoor rinks in their backyard, so I was able to get out there for a couple hours myself. I think it's really important that, as you mentioned, they do stay active. So that's certainly something that we're going to incorporate into our programming. But then on top of that, when we met a few nights ago, just to kind of give space to discuss, how everyone was feeling, one of the questions we asked was, what are you going to get the most use out of in terms of programming? Because I think, one thing is we have a lot of players who come from divergent experiences over the last 2 years. We have some who played major junior, some who played in BC. We have some who were in the Ontario Junior Hockey League, some coming from minor hockey. And so everyone has kind of had all these different experiences of what team programming looks like. I think the overwhelming sense that I got from our players was that it almost didn't matter what we did as long as we continued to get together. And I think part of why people, become team members or they become members of organizations is to feel, a sense of connection with other humans. And I think that's something that we want to make sure we maintain, is that, we're a team, we're connected. So we do have various programming with guest speakers. We're going to talk mental health. We're going to talk, some hockey related stuff and review video. I think it's just a matter of staying connected, and that when this 3 week pause is over, we can hit the ground running and pick up where we left off.
So Wes, let's talk about the team itself, and the team that I'd like to talk about is, after I interviewed Marty Savoy on Tuesday, I know there was a GM meeting. He stated in our interview, there's 19 different scenarios that you're going to look at. How quickly are you guys going to get back into game action? As I stated earlier in the interview, I think the earliest you can get back on the ice is January 27th. There's tentatively a game scheduled on January 28th against Wellington, I do believe. Is the league going to turn around that quickly, or is there going to be some time for these kids to get their legs back underneath them? Because you guys have had an extended break, as I stated. December 20th was your last game. And I think, the number one thing in this league has always been player safety.
Yeah, the intention is very much to return to play, and I think use that 27th as a date to get on the ice and practice. But that game will go forward as scheduled on the 28th, pending any other further developments with the government and the ongoing situation. And, part of that call was rescheduling the games that have missed. I think you said at the outset, we had 8 games that were affected, 4 home, 4 away. So the last couple of days has just been coordinating with other general managers at rescheduling those dates. I think the league is going to do its best to get all of those games into the regular scheduled time frame, which was the second week of March, I believe. It does pose some challenges, as it was already a condensed schedule, so it's tricky finding that balance, I guess, between getting those games into that time frame and still focusing on player safety, as you mentioned. I know that, we've discussed as a league the possibility that the regular season could be extended by another week or two just to make sure those games are played. But the OJHL remains committed to playing a full 54-game regular season and playoff schedule. So, I think I have 5 of our 8 games already agreed to in terms of rescheduling. And so, it's going to be definitely a full sprint as soon as we start. It's on the ice once, and then away we go for a game the very next night.
For the home games, Weston, I know it's hard to. I know you're still trying to schedule these games. Could we see some maybe afternoon games in Cobourg as a possibility because of the fact that, as we stated, and you being around Cobourg, ice time is at a premium? Or maybe off-site games. Sorry, or maybe off-site games. Maybe in Baltimore that has an arena. Maybe the ice time isn't as utilized as much out there.
Yeah, right now we're definitely not looking at off-site games, but it certainly could become a reality. As you mentioned, ice time is at a premium. I do know that, it's a reality for every team that, day games or afternoon games could be a possibility. I know that some of our rescheduled dates are, in fact, midday games. And, that poses some issues as well, because we have full-time students who are going to have to miss school, things of that nature. But I think, the important thing is that, again, like, these are elite athletes and they are looking to accomplish things with their athletic careers, that there is some sacrifice that's going to be involved with that. And I think, if there's one thing that we've learned through the last 2.5 years is that we do have technology like this available to us. So the students who are perhaps going to miss a class or two have access to recordings via Zoom. If it is distance online learning, that they're going to have access to materials. So I think the flexibility is in place for those student athletes as well to make sure that they're not falling behind. But it's definitely something that we're going to have to navigate.
So, Wes, let's get you to evaluate your club. You're 30 games into the season. You're 14-13-1-2 with 31 points, 111 goals for, 111 goals against, 8-5-0-2 at home, 6-8-1-0 on the road. Evaluate your club in the first 30 games for us.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because the team that we have today has not really played any games together. I took over as the general manager about 6 weeks ago and made several changes to the lineup. And even through that time, there's still been no games that we've played with a full roster. We've had a number of injuries. I think, coming back from pandemic was challenging for everyone. And I think a lot of teams have experienced some injury troubles because the players' bodies just certainly weren't equipped to deal with some of the wear and tear that goes with the season. So I think, from a results standpoint, we certainly would like to have a few more wins under our belt. I think we feel very strongly that our team is very capable of going on a deep run in the playoffs. As I said, we've made a number of additions to the lineup. We've beaten every team in division. And some of the games that did get away from us, were ones that we felt we probably should have won. So I think something that we talk about regularly is, a commitment to the process and not worrying about the outcome, as it will take care of itself. So I think we're well positioned for the second half of the season when we do return to, be a very competitive team. As I said, I think our expectations are very high. We still have our sights set on winning a championship this year. And, we play in a very competitive, tough division with 5 teams that can beat each other on any given night. And so I think the team that, uses this time over the next few weeks to prepare itself for the run down the stretch is probably going to be the one that is ultimately the most successful in the end. So I think we're just trying to make sure that we're up to the challenge. And there's been ups and downs, but overall, I think it's been an enjoyable season. And probably more than anything else, the prevailing sense is that we're all just grateful to have the opportunity to be back at the rink again.
How's the transition been, Wes, of taking over the GM role? I know it's one that you really haven't had too much history of? I know you were assistant GM in a couple of your years in the OJHL, but it's your first year of getting thrown right into the fire mid-season and taking over the general manager's role.
It's definitely been a challenge. I think there are responsibilities that a general manager has that, I think probably time management has been one of the things that I probably had to work on the most is, some of those obligations during the day-to-day, you certainly have to find time for. But I do think that from a roster composition standpoint, putting my coach hat back on, being the GM is something that is a major benefit. There's 100% alignment with what the coach's vision is because it's the same person. And so I've really enjoyed that. I think someone used an analogy. It's like, a chef wanting to have a say in what ingredients go into their dish. And so I think, I've really enjoyed the roster composition. The day-to-day, some of the stuff like rescheduling games and, working with other general managers, going on league calls, that's definitely been a learning curve for myself, but a welcome one. And even though it is a lot more work and a lot more time, it gives me much more appreciation, I think, for the people that I've worked with in the past and what goes in behind the scenes. So it's been challenging, but certainly worth it. And I hope that the fruits of the labor are going to show up in the second half.
30 games played, Wes. We have 24 games left in the regular season. What can the fans expect from the Cobourg Cougars in those final 24 games?
Well, as I alluded to, I think our expectations are extremely high. I know that our team likes to play an up-tempo game. The pillars of our game are pace, possession, passing, and we say position just to make it 4 Ps, but really it's detailed hockey. And I think, our fans should look forward to a team that wins a lot more than it loses. And it's an exciting brand of hockey. We like to, maintain possession, play a 200-foot game, and much more modern pro-style game than I think some of the other teams in our league have played. We like to use the middle of the ice. We like to transition quickly. But, I just hope that our fans have the opportunity to be there in person. And I know our group responds really well. As you see, our home record is better than our road record. I think that the fans of the Cobourg Cougars are a big part of that. They get behind our team. And, when they do that, it definitely builds energy for our group. And so I think, like I said, they should be excited to see our group come together in the second half, hopefully a healthy team. And, we can get everyone in the lineup every night. And like I said, go on a deep run here because I think our group is certainly capable of that.